Today, we're going to be comparing two of the most popular camera brands ever, Canon and Nikon, and really stack them up against each other and see who is the best of the best. And the reason that I'm doing this video, and I know people who are like, how is this even a comparison? Canon, obviously, because Nikon just doesn't match up. Now that statement right there is going to cause a frenzy in the comments. I already know it. Somebody's calling me a donut in the comments. I expect it, okay? And the reason for this video is my last video, I talked about how Nikon purchased Red and how that might be bad for Red because it might tarnish the Red name because of Nikon and what they are and in my opinion, their dispopularity on the video side of things. In that video, I also made a statement that I must apologize for. This is the apology section of the video. I made a statement about Sony. I don't want to attack the Sony fan base because they're a large one and they're a devoted one. I said that Sony sucks for photography.
Sony sucks at photography.
That's not what I meant. Sony's fine for photography. Sony's great, actually. Their image quality is incredible. I just personally think that Sony has more of their focus on the video side of things. I think they thrive and are a leader on the video side of things and are less used for photography, or way less used than companies like Nikon and companies like Canon. That's all I meant. Not that they actually suck and like their images are awful, just that they're not as widely used, but still great. And I know people who use it for photography, but I don't know anybody who uses Nikon for video, and that struck an argument in the comments as well. Again, I guess I'm a donut. So I thought I'd make a video directly comparing my personal favorite brand, Canon, with Nikon, and we can squash this bug together, all right? So let's get right into it. In my research, the first thing I wanted to find was who actually uses Nikon for video. And not to my surprise, there's not many people. MKBHD said that he has a friend in the past who used Nikon and everybody made fun of him for it.
I've never used a Nikon camera. Actually, that's not true. I've used a couple, but I've never shot mainly on any channel with Nikon. I always used to rag on Austin Evans because he shot on Nikon cameras for a while. We'd go to CES and he'd be the only one using a Nikon camera.
And you all picked on him?
Yeah. We were like, you're still using it? What is this camera? Why are you using this one?
Then I found this other person on YouTube, Evan Ranfit. He's popular. He's got a good following. He made a video saying the simple reason I use Nikon for video. And I watched this video and it's mainly a vlog. So I found myself scrubbing through a little bit until I got to the point where he actually told us why he uses Nikon for video. And I'm expecting and I'm anticipating some great thing that he knows that nobody else does, some feature that's hidden that just makes it totally worth it. And his short answer is he had it already for photography during COVID and he didn't want to buy something else, so he just started using it.
Why am I the only YouTuber, well, there's got to be other ones, but one of the only YouTubers who really uses Nikon cameras for video? And the answer is pretty simple, but kind of complex, and it's the fact that pre-pandemic, earlier this year, I mean, the people who followed the channel a long time know this, I was doing photography as my main job. YouTube was not my main job. I wasn't a YouTuber. This pandemic has kind of forced me into that, and I've adjusted into it. But had that been what I was gonna do this entire time, like if I woke up one day and said, I'm gonna be a YouTuber and make YouTube videos, I probably wouldn't be using the Nikon camera. The reason I was using it was because when I would go work with clients, when I would do events, when I would do product photography, as much as I love my Leica and I use it all the time in these videos, that's not really a camera for those things as much. I did use it for work, but I liked to have something that I could use for all my freelance stuff. And that was the Nikon camera right here. So it's one of these weird things where now that I've adapted and shifted, I don't know if I would be using it.
But what else I found was a direct comparison online between the Canon R8 and the Nikon Z5. I thought we'd go over these details and we can together and in the comment section go over who really has the crown between these two at least. I know there's other companies. I don't want to bash Sony. I don't want to bash Panasonic or Red or any of them. But in terms of video, we're going to talk about Nikon versus Canon, the R8 versus the Z5 specifically. So let's dive right in to those details. So first off, between the Canon R8 and the Nikon Z5, their sensors are both full frame, which is fine. And I'm sure they're fine sensors. Let's move on. The Canon R8 has 24.2 megapixels, where the Nikon Z5 has 24.3. So technically a win, completely unnoticeable. I'll give them both the check mark. Ding, ding. Okay. Moving on to the video crop factor. This is big. I'm filming on a Canon R right now, and it has a ridiculous 4K crop, and I hate it. So no 4K crop is great. Let's see what these have. The Canon R8 has no video crop, and the Nikon has 1.7 4K 30 video crop. So that goes to Canon. Ba-ding-a-ding-a-ding. Okay, moving on. The Canon R8 is 1 pound, and the Nikon Z5 is 1.3 pounds. That's not a deal breaker for anybody, but for the sake of the argument, we'll give that one to Canon. Memory card. What kind of memory can it take? SD cards, right? The Canon R8 has 1 slot, and the Nikon Z5 has 2 slots. I'm a big fan of having 2 SD card slots, so that's actually going to go to Nikon. They both have touchscreen tilt-up displays, so a check for each of them. This next one, you guys know I'm big on HDMIs. I hate micros and all the small ones and stuff. I wish every camera could just have a full or like a BNC, right, STI. But in terms of these cameras, the Canon R8 has a micro HDMI. No! And the Nikon Z5 has a mini HDMI. So better, not a full size, but we'll have to give that one to Nikon. Image stabilization. They both do have image stabilization, although from the reviews that I saw, Canon's is much superior, which doesn't shock me at all. From my experience, personally, Canon's image stabilization is amazing. So there was an autofocus test done between the Canon R8 and the Nikon Z5, and again, to no shocker, the Canon wins that. And then price, okay? Now, it's not hard to tell in this that Canon's winning just by a little bit, but in price, the Canon R8 is $1,500, and the Nikon Z5 is $1,296, so a bit cheaper, but at the cost of quite a few things that Canon does a lot better. So I'd say the price is fair, but I'd still go with Canon. Again, that might be biased because I'm a Canon lover. I prefer Canon. I have no issue with any other brands except for Nikon. I just dislike it. I'm not a fanboy to anything else. I'm fine with Sony. I have friends who use Sony. I have friends who use Panasonic. I have friends who use all of the above. But Nikon, not my favorite. And that was the point of this, because everybody roasted me in the comments saying, you're just a Canon fanboy, you don't know Nikon. Yeah. There's the research right there. There's the direct comparison. Now I know it's just between one camera and the other, but this is supposed to be a pretty even comparison between their matchups, and Canon wins. I'm sorry about it. Nikon just doesn't focus on the video side of things. If this was a photography test, it would be a completely different field of questions, right? But it's not. This is for video, and so in my opinion, Canon wins. And we can go into a couple of other details here, right? I have a couple of side-by-sides. Side-by-sides? Oh my gosh. I have a couple of side-by-sides, and here you can kind of see the color and the contrast and the sharpness of each one. And if I'm being completely honest, it's pretty hard to tell the difference. In this one where the woman's holding the color palette, the Canon's is a little bit more yellow, but that's all that I can notice. If you look at the other one, they're both sharp, they're both clean, they both look really good. So in terms of their image quality, both fantastic. You could use a Nikon, you can use a Canon, and probably not know the difference. But in the usability of it, and the functions that they have, Nikon just isn't as good as Canon. And that's just a fact, and it's also just my opinion, so whatever.
That's my opinion!
And there's other things that we can look at as well that I have listed here. For instance, the Nikon F mount, there's just not as many options for their lenses like there is for Canon. There just isn't. Canon can take a lot of glass, and they make a lot of glass. Nikon just doesn't have the same option. So Canon kind of takes it there, and that's what a lot of people complain about with Nikon as well. I know there's adapters and you can do this and that, but Nikon glass just isn't the same as Canon or any other manufacturer that makes it that way. The settings and the layout of it, again, I'm a big fan of Canon because of the simplicity of it, and that's one of the reasons why I don't use Sony. Personally, I think Sony's features and sometimes their quality is better than Canon, but the menus and the settings just confuse me, and I don't like it, and I've used them before, and I've just become super comfortable with the Canon one, and that's why I stick with it. And a lot of people complain about the Nikon one as well. Go look online. I don't care about your personal opinion. Take that back. Your personal opinion's fine, just like I'm giving my personal opinion. But it's my personal opinion, and I don't think that Nikon's settings or their menu is very user-friendly. And I think that Canon's is. And then there's just the other fact. This is a undeniable fact, and if you think I'm wrong, I don't think you're right. Many pro video shooters just don't prefer Nikon. They just don't use it. That's just kind of how it is, I guess. I've never ever, and I said this in my last video, I've never ever met anybody who uses Nikon for video. There's a lot of other companies that do great, and again, I said this in my last video as well, I think Nikon really is the king of the photography side of things. But when it comes to video, Nikon just isn't there. I don't think it ever has been. I think they've tried, I just don't think that they've been there. So in this comparison, I don't think it was hard to tell my opinion. Canon wins. If you want to see me do a Canon versus Sony or Canon versus Panasonic, I can do that as well. But a lot of people seem to care about my opinion in the last video, and I wanted to break down exactly why. And I wanted to do a little bit more research to make sure I wasn't wrong. And I don't think I was. I think that Canon beats Nikon for video every time. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you are a Nikon fanboy, I'm sure that you'll be going off in the comments. And if you see one of those comments, just know that that's definitely what's going on. And let me know as well if you want me to compare another camera group, and I will do so. Peace out. See you all in the next one.